Headaches are awful. Does chiropractic help with headaches? Yes. It is one of the things we're actually allowed to say that we treat. We treat headaches. But how does it help? How exactly is the adjustment, the things a chiropractor is going to do, how does that help with your headaches? I know that it helps a lot. It's usually the first thing to go away. I'm going to go over some different types of headaches that people present to me with and maybe theorize how it could possibly be helping. The first thing we want to do is talk about the different types of headaches. For example, you could have something that's vascular because you have, I'll just go ahead and read through them. So vascular and neurologic. So that's from decreased blood to the brain, increased pressure. You know what? If you have high blood pressure, something like that, and that's actually causing that, I don't think that's the most common type of headache. I think you're going to know that it's from your high blood pressure. I just don't think that's what am I going to do about that? I'm not going to treat that. I might be able to help, right? But I'm going to try and help. But that's not really what I'm going to be addressing. The next thing is going to be a myogenic or cervicogenic headache. This is really interesting because actually the muscles in the top of your neck and the muscles in your head, if you press on them, you'll get these little tender spots called trigger points, and they will actually reproduce your headache. So oftentimes what will happen is I will press on the muscle and we will find your headache. You'll go, oh my gosh, that's my headache. Or you're touching my brain. Sometimes people will say, I'm not actually, but we're actually touching the brain. Touching the muscle, and then that's reproducing the headache. And as a matter of fact, each muscle, for example, your trapezius muscle in here, if you have a trigger point, which is a little bit of damage, and it's basically a knot in the muscle, but when you press on it, it's very sensitive and sore, and it will actually refer pain up to your head, up to your temple on the same side. So that's actually pretty sensible. If I find issues with the muscles and work on the muscles and work on the joints around the muscles, because typically, when you think about a muscle, what's controlling the muscle? It's the nerve. And where does the nerve come out of? It comes out of the spine. And what's the muscle moving? Well, it's moving your spine. So if the real issue is with the nervous system and the movement of the spine. If I work on the muscle, trigger point might go away, but it'll probably come back. If I do an adjustment and work on the muscle, the problem will go away and it will never come back. And that's why so many people are they'll come in and tell me, I've had headaches for 15, 20 years and I've never been to a chiropractor. Nobody's ever been able to help me. I'm desperate. You're the last person I've come to. You're my last resort. And that's usually the easiest thing in the world. And to be honest, I think it's 90% of headaches are actually from the muscles and the skeleton, and the adjustment corrects it extremely quickly. And I am pretty confident when I tell people, once I've evaluated them and it's what I think it is, I'm pretty confident telling them that it's going to be the first symptom that disappears is going to be the headaches. I would expect that to disappear. So that's that. The next thing is going to be a metabolic toxic headache. When we talk about stress in chiropractic, there are 3 types of stress that can make your problem worse. And I'm going to tell every single one of my new patients that if you are under stress, you're not going to get better as quickly. You have to reduce the stress in your life, or you don't have to reduce the stress, but if you're under more stress, anticipate that it's going to take longer to get better. And those 3 types of stress are going to be physical, emotional, and chemical stress. So obviously if you fall down the stairs, it's going to take longer to get better because you're in an accident, you hurt yourself again. Emotional stress affects everything. So emotional stress is definitely part of it. And then chemical stress is the third. And that's what we're talking about right now. If you drink too much caffeine or alcohol, if you're exposed to toxicity, car exhaust, chemicals, whatever, as we all are to some degree, that can give you headaches. I'm not talking about migraines yet, but that could be a possible reason you're getting headaches. So in terms of the chemical nature, that, when we talk about chemical stress, chiropractic isn't necessarily going to help with that, with the adjustment. It will help you, but we are going to help you because we are going to talk about that chemical stress. Oftentimes I will help you with prescribing supplements for you to help with chemical stress, maybe antioxidants, for example, to help your body detoxify, or whatever's right for you. That depends. So that's interesting. Then there are migraines. Okay. Migraines are actually a symptom. They're not really, there's no root cause of a migraine, if you know what I mean. I mean, there is a root cause, but there's no actual, the word migraine doesn't specify a type of headache. It just describes a symptom that we have had for centuries and millennia. The word migraine goes back to the Greeks. The Greeks called hemicranios, or something like that. And the Latin, in the Latin language, they just shortened it to migrainos or something. Migrania. Instead of hemicrania, they came to migrania. Because that's kind of what, makes sense. And the French, I believe, called it migraine. So migraine's a French word. So it's French for headache. And we used to call it a garbage can diagnosis. So, I've got a migraine. You're not really saying what's wrong. You're just describing, it's this throbbing pain in the side of my head. Typically there's an aura. Maybe you feel nauseated or dizzy. But it's not saying exactly why that's happening. So migraine is a symptom. It's not actually a diagnosis. I don't call it a garbage can diagnosis. I prefer low resolution diagnosis. So it kind of gets you in the ballpark of what you're experiencing and what's happening, and it's very important. This is why it's so strange when you see something, this is a treatment for migraines. Or treatment for back pain. It's like, that's not really a diagnosis. You're not really saying what's wrong. You're saying you have pain, but you're just addressing the pain. You're not actually addressing the issue that's causing the pain. So the diagnosis is different. How do you have a treatment for that already? You don't know what it is. So patients like those diagnoses, those low resolution diagnoses, because they're easy to understand. They've heard the word before. Yeah, it's a migraine. I get migraines. My mom got migraines. There's no real explanation for that. It's just the phenomena that you're experiencing. But sometimes, you do find they get better. So for some reason, when you do an adjustment, you realign the spine, a very high percentage of the time, 85, 90%, almost all the headaches get better. I could probably count on one hand the number of people whose headaches didn't improve or completely go away. What else? Sinus headaches. Okay, so you have a sinus problem, and that causes pressure in your head. So if you address the sinus issue, the headache will go away. We don't treat sinus issues. We can diagnose if it's a sinus headache. Can adjust the cranium. And sometimes when you adjust somebody's neck, their sinuses open up and their headaches go away. And it only really is in that percentage of time, I think, where for some reason there's some connection with their neck and their sinuses. And when you correct the neck, the sinuses improve. But it's not like, we're treating sinus problems. It just so happens that we're taking care of your neck, we're taking proper care of you, you're getting healthier, and sometimes that is the missing link that makes it get better. That's not what I'm treating, but you see it get better a lot. Another thing is, when you're talking about when you're talking about the flow of the cerebrospinal fluids, this is another issue. People get headaches after they have a concussion, and part of that healing process is the flow of cerebrospinal fluid around the brain. And there's a sheath that goes around your brain. It's called the dura, or the meninges, okay? But the toughest part of that is called the dura. It's really the one that has the most, I think, forces on it. And I think it was, I want to say it was 1999 or 2000, so 20 odd years ago when I first started practice. They did some studies on cadavers, and they found that the muscles in the top of the neck attach to the meninges, to the dura. So these muscles, when we're working on the muscles, oftentimes that will affect the tension on the dura, and that can change the flow of the cerebrospinal fluid going around the brain. And you can imagine as well at C1, the first vertebra, which is, I think, the most mobile vertebra in the body, when it's out of alignment, that can also affect the flow of cerebrospinal fluid around the brain. People who've had concussions and they have misalignments, you see it a lot in football players, when they've had misalignments and they get that first adjustment, I've heard it described as being like a pitcher of cold water being poured from their brain and coming down. And there's a famous football player, gosh, I can't remember his name. I'll say it in another video. He said it was like a toilet flushing. So he went to a doctor, and they took an MRI, and famous Hall of Fame football player in the 80s, 90s, and he had suffered from concussions. He was probably near like suicide. He was doing awful. He went and got an MRI done. His spine was misaligned, and they said go to a chiropractor. And he said his first adjustment, the way he said it was, it's like a toilet flushing. And I think that's a really good description, because I've heard people say ice pitcher. It's very seldom that I get a case like that. I've probably had 3 like that, but it happens where you get that very drastic change to the flow of the cerebrospinal fluid, yeah, I think that's it. I think that's all I have to say about headaches. I don't have an explanation for why there's nausea. I mean, if you have an issue at C1, C2, that's where your brainstem is. And concussion symptoms, typically, nausea is a typical concussion symptom. And I can't remember off the top of my head what the actual mechanism is for that. But I know that that's a usual thing. So it makes sense that once we're adjusting the neck and taking care of that part of the body, that those symptoms go away, and they almost always do. Well, that was fun. I hope you found that interesting. Bye.